Hey guys, Saf coming at you with another Raid Shadow Legends video. So yesterday we had the announcement of a new Fusion champion, which Fiction gave you the heads up about. I'm here now just to give you kind of a little bit more of an in-depth analysis of this champion, kind of discuss the format that we're going to have for this Fusion, and then have a look at the kit and see if it's actually worth the champion and the effort to get this champion. Is this a fusion you should skip, or is this a fusion you should 100% go for? The first thing I want to do is just read out the way that Playroom have described the champion. That helps us get an idea of where they think the champion is positioned with. Then we're going to cover the format of the event, and then we're going to look at the kit itself. So we have a new high elf force HP based champion called Lonatharil. I think Fiction butchered this yesterday, so you got to think of it like Lord of the Rings. Lonatharil. I think that's how you say it. I could be butchering it as well. Lonatharil is the champion that will be helpful in PvE and PvP content. Let's go through his kit. With A1, he attacks one enemy, decreases his max HP by 30% of the damage inflicted, and shields your most injured ally. This skill will help you fight against the Scarab King, as the skill itself has a built-in destroy set. Okay, so already we're getting the sense that they've designed this champion specifically around the Scarab King. With the help of A2, Lonatharil's attacks all enemies and shields your team for 3 turns. If your allies are dead, shield cannot be removed, neither by enemies nor by allies like Seer. This skill will once again help in fights against the Scarab King and Demon Lord, as 3-turn shields will basically have your team permanently protected. Right, okay, so we have a fusion specifically designed for one boss in the entire game. It's a bit of a red flag for me at the moment, but we'll keep going. Lonatharil's A3 allows him to buff the team with increased crit damage and then team up with all allies to attack a target enemy. If you have a good team attack, or if you don't have a good team attack champion yet, Lonatharil will be a great help in fights against the Demon Lord, to up your damage there, and in a bit out of meta, but still fun, blender teams in Arena. Well, one thing I would definitely say here is ally attack is good. Increased crit damage is probably the weakest of the increased damage in buffs out of increased attack, increased crit rate, because it doesn't actually multiply your damage as much as you would think. It only adds to the stat. It's not as good as something like Longbid's increased 20%, because that's a flat 20% increased damage. That's not adding a stat to your champion. I wouldn't necessarily say this champion is really good for clan boss. When you consider Farragon the Fat brings poisons and decreased defense, when you consider Kreela brings increased attack and increased crit rate with her kit, when you consider something like Cardiel brings increased crit rate, and he also brings in that extra healing on the A1 and the block debuffs, this champion doesn't really bring anything extra to the clan boss fight, so I'm not really quite sure where they're coming from there. But you could use it as a blender. But again, the ally attacker is not as important as the champions that you're using in the blend. If you haven't got the Skullcrown and Sinacia combo, or Ray, or one of the big AoE A1s, then obviously blender is not worth. With the help of the passive skill, Lonatharil deals more damage to enemies under shield. On top of that, he has a HP aura for Doom Tower, which I think is quite rubbish because, you know, most HP auras are all battles. There's a lot of them now. I think Deliana is all battles, for example. Making it specifically Doom Tower feels bad. It feels like, looking at what Playroom is saying here, we built a champion for Scarab King. This is the important bit, which we're going to cover first. Warning, please note that the format of this fusion will be a bit different, but already familiar to you. Just as usual, you'll need to fuse the legendary champion from epic champions, while you'll need to summon the epic champions from fragments. So what does that mean? So the big one that this is similar to is the Under Priest Brogni fusion here. I've got the old fusion guide that we made about over a year ago now. This is the first time they did this type of event, where effectively the way you do it is the events will give you fragments. Those fragments are for the epic champions, and then you need to take the epic champions to rank 5, fully ascend them, then use those to fuse your legendary champion. It's probably the most resource intensive and time intensive way you can do a fusion, because you haven't eradicated the need to farm some food and potions for the epic champions, and you also can't really afford to miss a single event, because if you miss one of the fragments, there's no way for you to complete the fusion then. Sometimes they might do, I suppose, a catch up, like a free epic in one of the events potentially, but I don't think they did so during the Brogni one. Let's just take a look here. So you can see the Brogni one was known to be very, very difficult, because as you can see here, you had fragments for each individual event that was unique to the champion. You couldn't really afford to miss anything. Miss one event, you missed the entire fusion, you missed the champion. So when we talk about this champion here, we need to keep that in mind. This will be harder than just a traditional fragment, harder than just a traditional fusion. The combination of the two is quite nasty. Potentially there is a solution where you can pull the epic from a shard. That will happen during the fusion. There's a chance you can. But the odds of you getting one of those epic champions is quite low. Compared to, say, when it was a traditional fusion, the chance for you to get one of those goats or something of that sense was much higher because they're rare champions. So that's the format. If you want to see kind of like what structure it would be, you can, use the previous guides. You can find it on our website for the Brogni Fusion Guide. You can have a look, kind of the structure they had there. It'll be very, very similar. So that's already a bit of a red flag for me as well. Now let's take a look at the actual kit in detail. So this is the splash art that Playroom have provided us. We've got Lonatharil. He looks pretty cool. Looks like a high elf, as you'd expect, although he does have a pirate sword, which is a bit confusing to me. But yeah, he looks sweet. It's cool that he's HP based to some extent, because if he's providing shields based off his HP, you want a big HP pool. Force affinity is a bit like Deliana. Pretty good. Okay, so what have we got? Gallantry. Attacks one enemy, decreases the target's max HP by 30% of the damage inflicted, and it'll place a shield buff equal to 10% of this champion's max HP on an ally with the lowest HP. The problem we have to remember is it's HP based. HP based champions do decent damage, but they don't do anywhere near the attack based or defense based champions do. There are exceptions with Magna and Resolve, which I've covered before in previous videos, but they're unique in the sense that they have conditional extra hits, so therefore they've been coded if they don't hit that extra hit, and as a result the actual damage they produce is almost double what they should be doing. In this instance here, you don't really want to build a mass amount of damage necessarily, because you want that kind of support utility. You don't want him to be a burden to your team. However, if you want to decrease the max HP, it's based on the damage he deals, so he needs to hit hard. So I don't really know. We'll have to look at the multipliers when we get them to see how hard he actually hits. Then we get this unique kind of flicker barrier. It's a 5-turn cooldown. Let's hope that books to 3 turns, because then that would mean it's up 100%. I think they hinted that in the text that they provided, so that probably will book to 3-turn cooldown. Attacks all enemies, places a shield buff on all allies for 3 turns, equal to 20% of this champion's max HP. So if you can scale his HP to like 80,000, that's going to be, quick math here, 15,000, 20,000, something like that, shield. So it's a reasonable amount of shield. If there are any dead allies, so that can be 1, 2, 3, or 4, places a shield buff on all allies for 3 turns, equal to 30% of this champion's max HP, so it's slightly stronger. This buff cannot be removed, stolen, transferred, spread, or have its duration increased or decreased by enemies or allies. So it's like giga protected, for a better word. Now, the only thing I don't like about this is this concept that you have to lose a champion to enable that. Otherwise, it's just a glorified shield. I mean, I'll be honest, I can make a rare champion do this without requiring me to commit legendary books if all I need is the shield in Metal Shaper. I'm a bit concerned about that. I'm trying to figure out in the back of my mind in what way you could enable a scenario in which that shield is valuable enough to warrant killing one of your team. If you're in arena, for example, you have to kill one of your champions, 25% of your team, just to have a protected shield, which could still be depleted, because it's obviously about duration, it's obviously about being removed, but you can still kill through the shield. So if you hit hard enough, then it's irrelevant. And the shield is not going to be more than 30,000, 40,000. It's not going to be like 100,000 shield here. It's not going to be crazy numbers. It'll be substantial, but you're still going to see Hefrax can blow through it, Trunders can blow through it, Candrafons can blow through it, big single target hitters can blow through it. So not quite sure how you're going to make this work. Keep it in mind, Wells, you can't kill an ally, then shield, then revive the ally, because that other ally isn't shielded then. So I'm not really sure how that works. Then on the A3, we get Finest Hour, 6-turn cooldown. I would hope that book's much lower. Places a 30% increased crit damage buff on all allies. As I mentioned, that's the weakest of the damage increasing buffs. Then teams up with all allies to attack a single enemy. So we've got an ally attack. It's not the best. If I think of the ally attackers we've got in the game, we've got Kreela, we've got Fraric in the Fat, we've got Cardiel, we've got Longbeard. Longbeard tends to sit as number 1, tied closely with Cardiel, just because he has that flat 20% damage increase. That's a multiplier. It's different to a buff. It'll just increase the damage everyone does by 20%. It's very hard to overcome that. Cardiel is nice because you get the increased crit rate as well. and also Cardiel's remaining kit is actually much better than this. You know, he's got a full team cleanse, a block debuffs, an unremovable revive on death. He's got healing on the A1. He can do a true fear on 60% of the meta. Cardiel does a lot more here. He's also got an aura and speed. So that's something to remember here. In terms of Kreela, we get not a full team ally attack, which is frustrating, I guess, but it is a stun on that A2. But you get increased crit rate and increased attack. I would place this like not the worst ally attack in the game. Obviously, we have some singular and sort of 2-team or teams up with 3 people rather than all, but it's not exactly breaking any boundaries here, and it's not making it like really, really good. Then we get Piercer, inflicts 20% more damage against targets under shield buffs. I assume this is his damage and not anyone else in the ally attack, which means you're not doing loads of damage of the HP based champion here. So I don't really understand the benefit of that. If that was reduces damage your team takes by 20% whilst you're under shield, then that makes more sense, right? You're shielding my team and then my team gets a 20% reduction in damage. Then it makes more sense to have a protection on there as well, because I'm providing that kind of benefit of not only am I shielding, I'm also reducing the incoming damage. Makes more sense, but actually him dealing more damage, 20%, is not going to be a huge amount more. Feels a bit like a wasted passive there. Then we get the increase ally HP in Doom Tower battles by 35%. I have to be honest, I think some people have said this is good progression champion, and I kind of felt like, well, it doesn't really bring any tertiary benefits. So when you talk about progression, you either want something that can manipulate turn meter, or give you elements like leech, or give you elements like decrease attack, maybe some control in terms of stun or provoke. This champion is basically, if we really boil it down to it, a shield champion with an ally attack. And I don't know whether or not that's enough to warrant the effort you're going to have to do this fusion. Now, obviously, some people will collect it anyway. Good, that's great. And I don't want to be so negative to the extent where I say the champion is useless, because I don't think he's useless. I just think in terms of the quality of the other fusions we've had recently and a couple of other champions, I'm struggling to see where you might necessarily use him in the game. Keeping in mind that if you wanted to use him early mid-game, you have to work twice as hard to get this champion because of the fragment aspect. So where would I play him? Obviously, Scarab King is the obvious one. But I think for a lot of players who have been doing the Doom Tower a while now, most people have Urost, because he is the first legendary champion you get out of hard. Some people might be just starting to do Doom Tower. That's fine. I don't want to assume that everyone has Urost, but I know for a big proportion of the late game and end game players, they just run Urost. So it's like 2-minute, 3-minute runs. This champion then becomes useless, kind of for like that concept. That's it. That seems to be its main purpose. And when we've got champions like Metal Shaper, when you've got skills like Blood Shield, that would solve the problem as well. It feels like you've built a champion for something that is already like about a year behind when we needed it. It's a bit late. But it is another ally attack. It is a decreased max HP, and he does have a lot of shield. He's probably going to be very tanky, so potentially could be quite good if it's one of your first champions you do get. The difference, obviously, when we were talking about Deliano, is Deliano was a free champion. You didn't have to work for it, so therefore, as a new player, you get Deliano, you think, this is cool, great. I've now got a tanky carry that can do a lot of things for me. So I'm on the fence on this one, guys. I'm going to look and wait to see how good the epics are. We had a fusion before, the Sigmund fusion, where Demitha was the better of the options than the actual legendary. Maybe we have another situation like that where some of the epics are really good, because right now, for my account personally, I'm looking at this going, I actually have no use for this champion. For a newer player, maybe an early to mid game to maybe someone progress into late game, especially if you haven't got your Urost yet, it could be really good for the Doom Tower. But I just still feel like Metal Shaper being a rare, you don't need to commit so many legendary books. Don't know whether it's worth the investment. That's my problem. I'm struggling here. I'm trying to remain positive. I think we need to see the full picture of all the event structures to know how much effort it's going to be. I think we need to see what the epic's going to be like, and then I can make a better judgment. But so far, I wouldn't put this necessarily in the top 5 fusions we've had this year. I'd put it right near the bottom. So that's Lonatharil. He is a high elf. I think it starts next week. We have got a fusion prep up already. I think it starts maybe early next week, which means the patch can't be that far away. We'll have to see what else they will announce. We've already had some champion rebalances announced about a week ago. So it's good to see that these things are coming out regularly. Let me know what you think, guys. Do you plan to go for this fusion? Are you impressed by his kit? Have I missed somewhere where you think this champion could be very good? Let me know. I'm always open to interest and ideas. If you've liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I hope you've been enjoying sort of the more regular content lately. Hellhades will be back very soon on the news cycles. He's probably going to have access to more information about the fusion when Plarium give that to him than I currently have access to, so keep an eye out on his channel. He'll be back, but we'll still be continuing to put videos out on our channel regularly as well here, just to give you more content, more interest, and more variation of content that we hope you appreciate. So with that said, I'll catch you in the next video.